This lesson is on film production roles, which basically means who does what when making a feature film. Often people are confused about the difference between a producer and a director, and that question will be on the quiz. To complicate matters, there are many producers often with a feature film. The executive producer is really just the money, the one who sold the deal to the studio to make the film altogether. And the producer underneath this executive producer, and there might be numerous producers, are hired by the executive producer to be in charge of all the movie aspects of the production, like deciding where to film, where to shoot, all the logistics involved at that. Also, casting is often the job of the producer or can be the job of the producer. So, the producers that aren't executive producers know a lot more about film and generally just lead the entire project. So, what does the director do? The director is in charge of all the creative aspects of a film, which includes, but is not limited to, the shooting, the set, the lighting, plot, pacing, music, and the performances. But it depends on the director. Some would never try to coach actors because actors can be very sensitive about that and difficult to deal with. However, others might try to tell the actors exactly what they want. Also, directors often will delegate many of the other roles, like something like lighting, that there's also a director of lighting. And the director kind of serves as like the NFL coach, and a coach in the NFL wouldn't be focusing on every little detail as to how they're going to defend or what their different plays are. Those are up to the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, or the quarterback coach. But ultimately, the buck stops with the head coach, and that's what the director does. This helps to highlight the difference between the producer and the director. And certain movies will be producer movies. Other movies might be director movies. A Steven Spielberg or another major director out there would be guaranteed to have much more power over the movie than an unknown director. And often you'll notice that producers will make many comedies, for instance. They like have a particular type of movie that they're really good at making. But the producer's in charge of, as you can see, all the logistical elements. And notice here at the bottom, though, that the producer is often in charge of final cut, meaning what the final product of the film is. This can be very contentious because the director is supposed to be in charge of all the artistic aspects of the film. But what is a greater element of that than having the final cut? The reason for this is, let's say that the director wants the final cut to be 3 hours, and the producer says, well, that might make for the best movie, but nobody's going to come watch that. And we wanted you to cut it down to 2 minutes and 22 hours and 2 minutes would be too much. We want you to cut it down to 2 hours and 30 minutes. And that's your limit. And so the producer also might not like the ending. It might say, you know what, if the ending makes more people not come see the film, which is the primary goal of the film is to make money, then they might say, no, I need to change the ending to it. And that's a lot of times how movies can be really destroyed and made for the popular market so that they make money. That's ultimately what they're looking for. The director, though, typically is involved in casting, but if the producer says, no, you need this actor in this part, the director has to listen. Filming each scene, directing the actors, possibly. And if you ever see on a DVD, or even if there are multiple options for watching a film, that there's a director's cut, that means it's what the director had hoped to include in the film, but maybe had to take out because of what the producer said. But sometimes directors will get final cut. Some will not work without it. They would, again, only be the big names. The director also often chooses other roles like the cinematographer and works closely with those people. The screenwriter, of course, writes the script, but it usually doesn't start as a script because a script is 100 pages long. And when screenwriters are trying to get somebody to take on their idea, and that somebody would be the producer, because the producer is the money and can get the film produced, not the director necessarily. When they give ideas to the producer doesn't want to see 100 pages. The producer wants to just read a quick summary of it that might be 10 pages. And then often the producer will tell the screenwriter to write a screenplay and pay them to do so. The difference between an original screenplay and an adapted screenplay is that an original screenplay begins with the script for the film, meaning the idea comes from it. There's no prior source like a book, another movie, a play, a ride at Disney World, whatever. And an adapted screenplay takes an existing novel, another movie, a play, whatever, and adapts it into a script. The cinematographer, sometimes referred to as the director of photography, is somebody with expertise in the art of capturing images. Now, this shows a cinematographer with a camera. I think that nowadays that's unlikely. They'd be behind the camera. You have just a regular camera person behind the camera taking instructions from a cinematographer who's taking instructions from the director and is probably looking at multiple screens that they have set up in multiple places. But this is what is delegated from the director. It doesn't just have to do with what you see on the screen in terms of how each shot is composed, but also the lighting and any other elements of the mise en scène that need to be incorporated into the scene. Then there's the production illustrator or storyboard artist. This isn't done with every movie, but many movies do storyboarding. And I'll show some videos later on how to do storyboarding. But essentially here, it's planning out exactly what each shot is going to look like in the movie. And while this is a plan that they hope to follow, when they get to actually shooting the film, they might end up changing certain elements of it. But the storyboard artist is usually somebody with some drawing talent, but doesn't necessarily have to be. And for our film projects, you don't have to be talented as an artist in order to just put together some stick figures and just show in general how you're going to compose each shot. And then, of course, there's the editor. After shooting is complete, this would be a team of people anymore, and it's all done now in front of a computer or multiple computers, like in the lower image there. However, it used to be done with actual film, where they would actually have to cut it and paste it back together essentially in order to create the cuts from one shot to the next. So it has changed incredibly over the years. When it comes to the actors, and I probably didn't update it for this year, but those were the winners of the Best Actor and Actress Awards at the Academy Awards, I guess in 2019. And what I'd like us to concentrate on during this unit is that, yes, the actors are important, and that's why people go to see the movies. But referring to a movie as a Tom Hanks film because he's the actor in it doesn't make any sense. There are probably many actors who could fulfill that role and do a great job with it, but we're familiar with looking at his face, and it gives us comfort to see the same person on the screen, and he's a great actor. But ultimately, we want to be calling it the director's film. It's a Steven Spielberg film. It's a Quentin Tarantino film because they're the biggest influence behind it. And so when it comes to this unit, try to be picturing everything from the director's perspective because so much goes into producing a film behind the camera. I would say, in fact, much more than in front of the camera. There are a couple other roles there. I'm sure most of us have stayed after a movie is over to see all of the credits, and so many people go into making a movie. It's like taking every art form that exists and combining it into one medium when making a film. Of course, there's visual art. Of course, there's music. Of course, there's stage work. You just combine all of these things together, the special effects, the technology behind it, and so much goes into making a film. We will have a quiz on these basic production roles, and there is a game also to play along with the next lesson to practice the skills.